Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Shuffle music reviews and retrospectives from a gracelessly aging millennial. Well, we have a retrospective for you all on this episode. It's an unfortunate retrospective because it is in commemoration of the passing of Bob Weir, the Grateful Dead singer, guitarist, and co founder, who passed at 78. We'll read a little bit from the Variety article here on his passing. Singer-songwriter, guitarist Bob Weir, a cornerstone of the Grateful Dead and the San Francisco psychedelic band's many latter-day offshoots for more than half a century, has died after a long battle with cancer and lung issues, according to a social media post from his family. He was 78. The post said that Weir had been diagnosed last summer and began treatment 3 weeks before Dead and Company, a spin-off group of the Grateful Dead, played a weekend of shows at Golden Gate Park to mark the original band's 60th anniversary. Yeah, he joined the band very, very young. So that's why, at 60 years, the 60-year anniversary mark, he's at 78 years of age. He joined as a teenager. Many fans believe those live-streamed concerts might be the band's unbilled farewell engagement, but few could have guessed the conditions under which Weir powered through what turned out to be his final gigs. It is with profound sadness that we share the passing of Bobby Weir, the family statement began. He transitions peacefully, surrounded by loved ones after courageously beating cancer as only Bobby could. Unfortunately, he succumbed to underlying lung issues. The statement continued, Bobby's final months reflected the same spirit that defined his life. Diagnosed in July, he began treatment only weeks before returning to his hometown stage for a 3-night celebration of 60 years of music at Golden Gate Park. Those performances, emotional, soulful, and full of light, were not farewells, but gifts, another act of resilience, an artist choosing even then to keep going by his own design. As we remember Bobby, it's hard not to feel the echo of the way he lived, a man drifting and dreaming, never worrying if the road would lead him home. A child of countless trees, a child of boundless seas. There's a picture of Bob Weir tweeted out by the estate on Instagram this evening as I record this January 10th. Weir was just 16 years old when he befriended Jerry Garcia, then a music teacher at Palo Alto, California Instrument Store, on New Year's Eve of 1963. The two guitarists formed an old-time music unit, Mother McGee's Uptown Jug Champions, and went electric with the rock band The Warlocks before finally taking the name The Grateful Dead in 1965. So here they are doing a gig, one of the early gigs as The Warlocks. You can see Jerry in the front on the lead guitar, and then Bob Weir, of course, a rhythm guitar player. He is the second from the left there with the black hair facing, I guess, camera left, stage right in that old photo. Key to the Dead's expansive jam-based sound was the elegant freeform interplay between the lead guitarist Garcia and his deft frontline foil Weir, whose unorthodox work transcended the rhythm guitar label, quote-unquote. His style was rooted in country and blues, but as he explained in an interview with Alan Paul, it was rooted in an unlikely source. My dirty little secret is that I learned by trying to imitate a piano, specifically the work of McCoy Tyner in the John Coltrane Quartet, Weir said. That caught my ear and lit my flame when I was 17. I just loved what he did underneath Coltrane, so I sat with it for a long time and really tried to absorb it. Of course, Jerry was also very influenced by horn players, including Coltrane. Weir was not the dominant vocalist in the group, contributing about a third of the lead vocals, but even when Garcia was assuming those duties, he contributed to the layered harmonies that characterized the band's most popular work. He took the lead on what is possibly the Dead's best-known and most iconic song, Truckin', a track from the 1970s, American Beauty, that contains the beloved couplet, lately it occurs to me, what a long, strange trip it's been. Yes, what a long, strange trip it's been is the iconic Grateful Dead line that everybody knows. Yeah, Bob Weir, obviously an amazing career, not only his work with the Dead, but solo albums that he put out, including side projects with outfits like Rat Dog, Bobby and the Midnights, Further, which he took on with Phil Lesh, and most recently, Bob Weir and the Wolf Bros, which did a live album produced, or I should say, put out by Jack White's Third Man Records. They may have produced that as well, actually. I'm not sure. But they were the ones who put that album out. So he kept working till the end, obviously touring with Dead and Company, the new incarnation of the Grateful Dead, featuring John Mayer. Ace was a solo album that he put out in 1972. And this kind of speaks to his influence on the band, which I'll talk about a little bit. In fact, so much influence that some would litigate whether this is a solo album at all, since the Grateful Dead essentially was Bob Weir's backing band on this album. Jerry Garcia plays on this album. Phil Lesh plays on this album. One of their two drummers, Bill Kreutzmann, plays on this album. I still do think it's legit as a solo album, since Bob Weir does all of the songwriting and the lead vocals on this. But again, it just kind of speaks to the influence he had on the band, that this is itself, yes, a solo album, but it's a quasi Dead album. Greatest Story Ever Told, Black Throated Woman, Walk in the Sunshine, Playing in the Band, Looks Like Rain, Mexicali Blues, One More Saturday Night, and Cassidy. Mexicali Blues would actually end up on the Grateful Dead's Best Of album, even though it was first recorded on the Bob Weir solo album. Playing in the Band, of course, would become a staple at the Dead shows, a long jam song. The recording is about 7.5 minutes on the Ace album, but those live versions, when they played that song, would very often exceed 20 minutes. Longest recorded version of that song is actually 46 minutes and change. But as you can see here on the Grateful Dead's Best Of, which was put out in 1974, one of several Best Of albums, but this is really the one that everyone refers to when they talk about the very best of the Grateful Dead. You have Mexicali Blues there, the track from Bob Weir's solo album Ace, on there as a Grateful Dead track. 1972 was a crazy year for the Grateful Dead. They actually had 3 of their members go and record solo albums. So this is Garcia by Jerry Garcia. He recorded a solo album that year. And much like Bob Weir's Ace, a lot of the songs on Garcia's solo album ended up becoming staples of the Grateful Dead live shows. You can see here Bird Song, Sugaree, and The Wheel, especially. Those 3 songs were songs that the Grateful Dead would play over and over again at their live shows. Not only that, you also had their drummer, Mickey Hart, put out a solo album called Rolling Thunder. This was actually a crazy album. I think this album is a lot of fun. 2 of the songs from Bob Weir's solo album, Ace, actually made it onto this album. They just went by a different name. So if you look at the track list, track 2, The Main 10, on Mickey Hart's solo album here, that is Playing in the Band. And it's a really crazy kind of funky psychedelic version of that song. This album is actually a lot of fun. I should do an episode on this because I had forgotten a lot about this one until just a few hours ago. But if you listen back to this one, it's actually really cool. And then Pump Song, which is track 8, off Mickey Hart's solo album, that is The Greatest Story Ever Told, which was recorded as part of Bob Weir's Ace. All 3 of these albums came out in the same year. But Bob Weir, despite the fact that he did not write or sing a majority of the Grateful Dead song catalog, ended up really being arguably as big an influence on the band as Jerry Garcia in terms of how they were perceived in the culture. Jerry Garcia did the lion's share of the songwriting. He wrote far more songs than Bob Weir did. But because of that, Bob Weir's songs ended up being some of the most frequently played songs at the Grateful Dead shows. Now, the reason for that is because the Grateful Dead used to play 3 or 4 hour concerts, sometimes in their peak 5-6 hour, just unbelievable marathon shows. And Jerry wanted to split the lead vocal duties with Bob Weir. Pretty obvious reasons. didn't want to do all the vocals himself for a 3, 4, 5 hour show, even though a lot of these songs have extended instrumental jams. That's still going to beat the hell out of your voice if you're doing lead vocals every night for 3, 4 hours a night, a majority of the time. So Jerry and Bob would kind of split the lead vocal duties. And because Bob had so much fewer songs than Jerry Garcia, a lot of the Bob Weir songs ended up in more constant rotation. And this includes the covers that he used to sing vocals on. So if you look at the most frequently played Grateful Dead songs, drums doesn't really count. That's a drum interlude. So every time they do that, it was listed on the set lists and on the live album track list as drums. So you can disregard that. But Not Fade Away, that's a cover that Bob Weir sang lead vocals on. The other one is a Bob Weir song that he wrote, Me and My Uncle. That's another cover that Bob sang lead on, Playing in the Band, as we just saw. That's off of the Bob Weir solo album, Ace. That's one of his. Sugar Magnolia, this is off American Beauty. That is also written by Bob Weir, who sings lead on that. That's a beautiful song. That's probably my favorite of all of Bob Weir's songs that he wrote for the Grateful Dead. China Cat Sunflower, that's a Jerry Garcia tune. One of the only in top rotation for the Grateful Dead, actually. I Know You Rider was kind of split. Sometimes Bob would sing lead, sometimes Jerry would sing lead. Truckin', written by Bob Weir on lead vocals. Good Lovin', cover that Bob sang lead on. Jack Straw, Bob on lead vocals. Space, that's another sort of interlude that's kind of like drums, doesn't really count. New Minglewood Blues, Bob sang lead on that. Tennessee Jed, Garcia sang lead on that. But then Mexicali Blues, of course, another Bob Weir solo track that ended up in the Grateful Dead catalog because of its presence in the live set rotation. So as you can see, so many of the most commonly played Grateful Dead tunes were either covers that Weir sang lead on or songs that were written by Bob himself, either for his solo material or for the Grateful Dead. And so even though he didn't have as many songs as Jerry Garcia, because of Jerry's desire to split the lead vocal duties on the live shows, Bob Weir ended up being as present as Jerry. Because of the quantity of songs that Garcia wrote, if you think of the Grateful Dead, the first person that comes to mind is still Jerry Garcia. But if you were going and seeing the band live at their peak, which is ultimately the Grateful Dead was a live band, you saw plenty of Bob Weir and heard plenty of Bob Weir, and so many of the Grateful Dead staples are Bob Weir tunes. So he just had an undeniably tremendous impact on rock and roll and on the music scene at that time. The Grateful Dead are a phenomenal band. I think their live shows were obviously what they were all about, but they did some terrific studio work as well. I will do an album ranking for them at some point, obviously. But I did want to come on here and commemorate the passing of Bob Weir. This is a still from his final performance. So this is him performing Touch of Grey at what would be his final show with Dead and Company in Golden Gate Park, where it all began. That is a YouTube video. I will link to that in the comments in case you want to check it out. But rest in peace, Bob Weir, 1947 to 2026. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. Hope you go back and listen to some Grateful Dead. It'll put your mind and heart at ease. The Grateful Dead is like chicken soup for the soul. I absolutely love that band, both live and a lot of their studio work, which I think is kind of underrated. Especially, well, I won't say especially because I don't want to spoil the album ranking. So we'll leave it at that for now. Rest in peace, Bob Weir. Thank you all very much for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.